Hi everyone, welcome to Match 4 Game 2. And this game is going to give us a bit of an example of some of the backgame principles that one would think about, especially how to play against the backgame. But I think I mentioned this before. Try to avoid a backgame if at all possible. Um, you generally, it's very hard to get the timing right to play a backgame. And often, you just end up losing a gammon or worse with the cube, right? A doubled gammon. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because in this particular game, black really ends up playing a really horrible back game in terms of timing and crunching and things like that. So you won't really see how to play a back game, but more how to play against it. Okay, and in any case, have a watch and learn a little. Thanks. Right. So second game, white is leading 2-0, 5 away, 7 away. Still early in the match, but white has a decent lead. And black rolls 4-3 to start. It's normal, of course, when you're behind a couple of points to bring a couple checkers down with a 4-3 like this. Be a little more aggressive to try to get back into the game, into the match quickly. But as you can see, it's not really a mistake to split in some way, whether it's splitting and bringing it down this way or splitting and bringing it down this way. But as a general rule of thumb, keep that in mind, right? If you're behind in the score, you generally aim to play a little more aggressively, maybe maintain your anchor just in case, okay? Even though it's a 24-point anchor, yeah? So keep that in mind. Okay, white has a 6-1 and naturally makes the bar point. But this is kind of interesting, right? Because it's not far behind to split the back checker and hit off the 5-point. And part of it is predicated on this idea that after making the bar point, okay, you've got a prime, okay, but black is already kind of at the edge of the prime, right? And it's not going to be as effective if black is able to make that 5-point. Okay. Yeah, it's great to have a mini prime like this, but and it's not wrong. But this is another case where, it's really kind of surprising and worth consideration. Very few people would have considered, okay, this possible play of coming out and hitting, and it's actually quite interesting and very complicated, right? So if I were playing against what I perceive to be a weaker player, then this is actually quite a decent option that wouldn't really kill my PR by playing it. So be careful about making automatic moves, right? This is a lesson we come back to again and again. Right, so in any case, white does make the bar point, and so does black. Okay. Now, once black made the bar point, I remember thinking, okay, I need to split my back checkers. Black already split his back checkers, and black is threatening to lengthen the prime, right? Making a 4 prime instead of a 3 prime, and I've still got my checkers on the 24-point, right? And so I had this idea before the roll, and then I got the roll, and I thought, aha, perfect, I can split and hit. And I just forgot about the fact that, after a 2-1, I can just make the 5-point. Much stronger, right? To have the 5-point, and once you make it, you have this budding 4 prime, right? If there's no hit back from the bar. So much stronger, clearly. But it was just connected with this idea that, oh, I've got to split the back checkers, and then I can hit on the 5-point. And it's obviously much weaker than just making a 5-point. So interesting psychological moment that you should also look out for, right? The danger of thinking, okay, I need to do this without paying enough attention to your role and the possibilities it offers. Think a little. Right, so let's see if white is punished. And not immediately, at least. Black rolls 4 and 6 and misses. It's interesting that bringing a spare checker down to the black's bar point is an alternative here, right? The idea of perhaps counter priming white's checkers and putting a little extra pressure on this point here, right? By leaving the back checker. Of course, you could get pointed on in different ways, but yeah, worth considering, right? Instead of automatically jumping out. Okay. So, yeah, black jumps out and white hits. Okay. There's no, everything else is a blunder. You want to hit, send a checker back. Of course, you've got the 5 points still open, but yeah, you have to basically jump out and keep yourself from being prime, that kind of thing. Keep in mind that if white thought, oh, it's maybe better to make the 5 point and prime, you're only priming one checker, right? Whereas black will have the chance to prime 2 checkers. So you don't, white doesn't want to engage in a prime versus prime situation here. Okay, think about that as a principle. If you got 2 checkers back and your opponent has 1 checker back, then you generally don't want to get into a prime versus prime. Okay, you want to look at alternatives. Okay, black comes in with the 1 and hits with the 3, of course. And white rolls a 1-6. And yeah, it makes sense, okay, not to jump out immediately. You do want a spare checker, perhaps, on the bar point to try to make that 5 point, right? And just jumping out just leaves yourself open to being hit. So, okay. And black is unable to hit on white's 5 point. And so there are a couple choices here, right? One is fairly reasonable, right? To hit on the 1 point and try to gain a tempo or some time to distract white from simply making that 5 point. But the other option is interesting, which is, again, to go for the prime versus prime. Now, of course, it is true that black now has 2 checkers back, okay? But white still has to make the 5 point, right? The downside, of course, is that you have this blot left here. So this is XG's recommendation, and it's a good blocking position with some good priming potential here, right? But it is a bit risky, and I imagine in rollout the decision will be pretty close. Yeah. So yeah, it would look something like this. So interesting. But the blocking position and the potential priming position seems to win out here. Okay. But that being said, you know, giving up the prime position and hitting looks decent as well. Okay, white comes in and hits, and notice black's move has prevented white from covering on the 5 point in some way, and so that's one advantage of it. Okay, so white hits, and black, again, doesn't roll great from the bar. That 5 point is, you know, the blot on the 5 point is leading a charmed life here somehow. Okay. But yeah, black hits with the 6. And this is kind of interesting, right? White sends over the cube. Now, it's certainly true that white has a good advantage here. And white was thinking, of course, of the fact that, if he can put these 3 checkers that black has, right, behind a 4 prime. So if he enters and he's able to make this 5 point, then that's going to be pretty strong. And black's structure is kind of compromised. And notice how many blots there are around the board, right? That's another consideration for the double. So it's quite a volatile position. We're already at 25% gammons for white, but his winning chances are not very high, 68%, right? So it is a mistake to double this position, simply because we're looking at possibilities here, but there's some things that can go wrong for white as well. Black does, if white doesn't perform from the bar, then it's possible black will also have some attacking chances. Notice that even black has like 12% gammon chances here. But it's an interesting cube, and it's certainly something I've been trying to do, is double more aggressively. But this is a little too aggressive. Okay, black takes, of course, and white doesn't roll great from the bar, to say the least. One of his worst numbers. Okay, and all he can do is, jump out to the 14. Okay, 5-4. Well, finally, the black is able to hit on white's 5 point, and then he correctly double hits. Okay, to try to seize the initiative and take advantage of those blots, and see if he can turn this game around after taking a 2 cube, right? White is fortunate to hit back, and black himself doesn't roll very well at all from the bar. But basically, he makes quite a large mistake, and he just has to continue hitting here, okay? It's just like, he tries consolidating a little, but there's just too many blots around the board. You've got to try to keep the pressure up on white somehow, and kind of pray for a bit of a miracle here. But at least in this case, if you get hit, you'll be able to maybe make an anchor or something like this. And this just gives white a free hand, okay, with all these blots. It's really unfortunate. So quite a big mistake by black. He really needs to hit loose here and try to keep up the pressure on white. Don't give him a free hand with all the blots lying around. Okay. And so, of course, white has plenty of chances to double hit, and double hit he does. Okay, hitting twice on the 5 point, and black comes in with both, but doesn't hit on the 5, right? Now, the problem, of course, is that, black has decent structure for a back game, but his position is not ideal for a back game, right? Whenever you have a deep point like this, you generally want to avoid a back game because the long-term prospects of building a decent home board, is not so strong. Okay, but black, unfortunately, is kind of being forced into a back game here. Okay, so white covers on the 5 point and sends another checker back, and white is not afraid to send another checker back just because black's position, again, it's not pure, it's weak for a back game. Black hits, strangely. I mean, it's not too bad, I guess, but as I mentioned, black shouldn't really settle for a back game here. And so at least trying to move one of the back checkers up, to give black a little more daylight to escape with some numbers, okay, like fives and things like that, could be important here. Okay, white comes in and hits again, not afraid to hit. And black dances, which isn't necessarily bad in terms of timing, okay? So, black at least doesn't crunch as fast, but let's see what happens. It's still not looking good for black. As you can see, white has a really high equity. Chances of winning here are quite high. And the gammons are quite high as well. Okay, so approaching 50% gammons. Okay, 5-3, and makes one of the blocking points. Yeah. And again, a double five from the bar. 2-1. So this is where we start getting into how to play against a back game. Okay, so basically, you're not afraid to slot, right? And so the top two plays by XG is to slot the 4-point, even though black is on the bar and can come in and hit it, or lots of numbers come in and hit. But the idea is if black is not able to hit, then you're happy to make that 4-point. And if he does hit, then his timing is kind of hurt. Okay, it's going to be very difficult for him to extricate all these checkers. Okay, and so you're not afraid of being hit at all. Yeah, but you would love to make that 4-point and create an even stronger prime. So when you're playing against the back game, that's one of the strategies. Okay, is to slot an empty point in your home board. But unfortunately, white misses it. Okay, white slots the 9-point, which is not bad, but not as good as slotting the 4-point. Okay, black comes in with a 1, and you can see his home board is already starting to crunch. Things are looking very sad. Yeah, so white just jumps out and makes that 5 prime. Okay. Black has to hit, of course. It doesn't help his timing necessarily unless white hits on the 2, which he does. Okay. Not a lot of choices here for white. Again, white breaks his midpoint just because he's not afraid of being hit, right? So it's not a big thing. And black rolls a 3-1. So again, this is kind of wrong what black plays, because he doesn't have time for a back game. Okay, and so it makes much more sense just to go to the 4-point. Okay, and try to escape some checkers to avoid crunching too much. But on the whole, it's very difficult to play this position with black. Okay, white rolls 5-3, and again, sometimes you do have to be careful about hitting your opponent when your opponent is playing a back game. But in this case, black's position is so bad that you're just increasing your gammon chances as opposed to really increasing your opponent's winning chances with the back game. So white hits away and aims at that 4-point. But black has a nice roll, at least, to take control of the 4-point. Okay. And white makes the 6 prime, which is quite nice. Yeah. And crunch away black does. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of interesting, right? This is a blunder just because you want to get hit. Okay, so black correctly leaves 2 blots in his home board, hoping that white will hit and gain a little time at least. But on the whole, it's a terrible position. White doesn't hit and just jumps out. Doesn't have to jump out. He can just play. This is interesting. 10-8. White wants black to play 6s, right? Before, black had 6s to play on his side of the board, but now he doesn't. So he wants black to play 6s to screw up his timing now that his board is crunched. So that's another thing to look out for when you're playing against the back game, is to open up some 6s for your opponent to play if he's got a crunched home board and maybe a few too many checkers in the back that might make it difficult for you to come in. But if he hits, like if he hits from the 4-point, right, then maybe you hit back and then hit on the 4-point, and then you'll make the 4-point, and then black's position is worse. That's kind of the general strategy. Okay, 3-2, and I guess this is the best that black can really hope for, right, is to bring a spare checker to jump out once the 6 prime folds, and hopefully maintain a 3-point home board. We'll see. Okay, 5-4, and white seems to play just a natural move here, but XG just wants white to play to the 2-point. I guess it's the idea also that it's nice to have another home board point, so that when you start hitting black's checkers as they jump out, hopefully it'll be harder for black to get in, and the gammon chances increase. Yeah, and I suppose it's nice to keep a checker back here if possible, so that if white is able to clear a point from here and black jumps out, then maybe this checker can catch him. Okay, and again, increase the gammon chances. Okay, black can't move, and white correctly slots the 2-point, and black correctly does not hit it. Okay, just jumps out. Okay. It is interesting here that there is the choice of diversifying the spares on the front 2 points. Okay, so that you don't have to break either point when white opens up the 6 prime. Okay, and white makes a blunder here, and I guess it's just white understands that he's got to leave a blot, which he's not worried about, but he takes a little too far, and thinks, okay, I'll leave 2 blots and make the 2-point and start clearing some points. But it's a little too rich, okay, and just gives black just too many opportunities to bring checkers out. Okay, ideally, white would like black to break the 3-point, maybe. If let's look at XG's suggested play. Okay, it's just to clear 1 point. And then if black rolls a 5, then he has to break the 3-point, which white would like very much, right, in order to attack him there. But white understood the principle of not being afraid of leaving blots when your opponent has a crunched home board, but this is too much. That being said, black doesn't hit. Okay, and has to jump up. 4-2, white should just basically clean up the blots. Okay, there's no real reason to remake points or anything like that, like white does here. Okay. Yeah, really unfortunate for black, but he can't jump out with any of the checkers, and his home board crunches even more. XG does prefer 3-1-2, but I don't think there's really a big difference here. Okay, 2-1. Interesting that these points might be hard to clear, so XG says might as well clear them now. Stack, put a lot of checkers on the 6 and 5. Don't worry about being hit. It's interesting. 6-4. Black finally gets out. 4-3. Again, might as well clear the 8-point. Even if you're hit, there's no way really, that black's going to be able to contain the one checker. And this kind of, you want your spare checkers in case anything bad happens in terms of other rolls, okay? So like double fives or something like that, right? So it's better, there's no reason for white to play uncomfortably in this situation with black having a home board like this. Okay, black jumps out with another checker. And yeah, white, 5-4 is very uncomfortable. So it would have been better if he'd had spare checkers on the 6 and 5, okay? But in any case, he clears some spares and slots the 1 point. 4-2 just comes in. 6-3 clears a point. 6-2, out we go. 3-2, yeah. Again, might as well clear it. Black has 2 blots in his home board. So even if white gets hit, there's not a lot of danger, right? And in some cases, it might not be easy to clear this point. Oh, and yeah, I guess you don't really have much of a choice, right? Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Right, 3-2, black hits. Okay, and he's supposed to sort of make the 11 point as a blocking point, okay? There are quite a few blots in this case, and it's good to maybe clear up a few of them. Okay, but not, yeah. This is a bit rich, so many blots out there. Okay, white hits and covers, but white could have just done a double hit. It makes sense, right? And then maybe pick up more checkers. If black enters on the 1, it's not a problem again. The double hit was much better than just covering on the 1. Okay, 3-5. XG thinks, why hit? Okay, like you're just asking for trouble, so you might as well just try to save the gammon at this point. You really, your chances of winning are really small, so better not to risk the gammon. But instead, white decides to go all out and hit. Black hits and comes out. Black is able to hit back, and double 6s comes in. So now the gammon is definitely in the air, right? 3-1, not excellent. 6-1, ooh, crucial roll, right? It was going to be a bit difficult to clear those 2 points, the 6 and 5 point, and now this is looking much better in terms of clearing it. 4-1, okay. Black has to be careful that, he has to, XG says, fine, make the 3 point, but black has to be careful that he doesn't get backgammoned, especially after this roll, double 4s. I mean, of course, it doesn't take any checkers off, but now black is basically definitely gammon, right? It's unless he rolls some large sets. Not double 1s, isn't going to help. Okay, 6-5 off. Let's just go see if black can rescue this at all. double ones, so many checkers off. Black is not getting any sets. Yeah, it's pretty much over in terms of a gammon. Okay, and 6-2. So white wins the gammon 4 points and goes to Crawford. And yeah, so I hope you gained a little insight. Obviously, it's not an optimal back game, you know, where black has decent timing. It's sort of horrible position to play a back game from. And so black should have tried his darndest to get out of that situation. But in any case, it did help, you know, gave us an opportunity to highlight a few principles about how to play against a backgame, slotting points in the home board, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So let's see if black can survive the Crawford game and try to make a comeback. Okay. Hope you learned something from that, and hope to see you next game. Thanks.